Long Take Review, a film podcast with one eye always on the Oscar race. I'm your host, Jen Sipchak-Bankard, and I'm here with some friends I want to shine a spotlight on. First, if he's going to die, he's going to die historic on the Fury Road. It's P.T. McNiff. How's it going, P.T.?
I don't want to say James Bond's terrible at sex, but he did sleep with 55 women in 24 movies, and most of them tried to kill him afterwards. I'm doing well, Jen. How are you?
I'm doing great. I didn't see that one coming at all. And he's been busy in his hab cultivating a crop of all-natural, organic, Martian-grown potatoes. It's Antonio Elefado. How's it going, Antonio?
This is documentary short film. You cannot make a dime on this. These people will never be rich as long as they live. This Oscar's going home in a Honda Civic. I'm doing great, Jen.
I forgot about the Honda Civic part.
I do appreciate these people will never be rich when the winner of this award is directing the Rey Skywalker movie for Star Wars. So she's rich now. It just took her 9 years.
Amazing. So, listeners, those were all references to either the films or the ceremony that was the 2016 Oscars. We are here today to do another Oscar Fairy Flashback episode in which we look back at a past Oscar year and share what we would want to change about the winners and the nominees were we to be in the good graces of the all-powerful Oscar Fairy. So, for those who don't know, we'll sort of explain how that all works in a moment. But before we meet halfway across this bridge of spies, PT, if after listening to this episode, people don't want to be gone from the show for a long period of time and have to come back like a Revenant, because that's what Revenant means, what can they do?
Apologies that we couldn't get Margot Robbie in a bubble bath for this explanation. But if you don't want to miss new episodes when they drop, please follow the Long Take Review wherever you get your podcasts. We host the feed on Jen's Substack at thelongtake.substack.com. But you can get us straight out of your podcast feeds on Spotify, Overcast, YouTube, Amazon Music, Steve Jobs' Apple Podcasts, and many more. And if you have room on your social media profiles, you can also follow us on Instagram and Threads at The Long Take Review and on Letterboxd at LTR Pod.
Thanks, BT. So now we are going to travel back in time to 2016. And since, the Oscar Fairy Flashback is PT's brainchild, so I'm gonna turn things over to him because he explains how it works best.
Well, thanks, Jen. So as you heard in our intro here at the Long Take Review, we have one eye always on the Oscar race. Usually that means we are looking forward to the upcoming Academy Awards, talking through the race as it happens. But we also find it fun to occasionally step back and train our eye on an earlier year in Oscar history. Regular listeners know that we frequently talk about what we would change in the current race if we had the power of an Oscar fairy. Well, sometimes we use that magic wand on the past with an Oscar Fairy Flashback. This is the third time we will have done this. We have done it twice before, covering the 86th and 87th Academy Awards. You can find those in your podcast feed. This episode, we are moving forward yet another year, and we'll be talking about the 88th Academy Awards held on February 28th, 2016, and honoring the films of 2015. Before we start talking about changes, let's travel back and see what happened at the Oscars that year. There were 3 films that won multiple awards at this ceremony. Any one of these 3 could really claim, we had a really huge night. Spotlight won Best Picture, somewhat of a surprise, as I remember. It was unknown even up until the envelope opened. It won Best Picture, but it only got 2 wins total. Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay. It's the first film since 1952's The Greatest Show on Earth to win Best Picture and only get one other award. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting.
It is an often cited case in Oscar punditry.
Yes, that it's rare. It's in rare air that usually you need to have some wins racked up by the end of the night. But not this time. Exception that proves the rule, I guess. So also getting multiple wins was The Revenant, which got 3 wins, but 3 pretty big ones. Best Cinematography, one of the top below the line categories, and then Best Director for Alejandro Iñárritu and Best Actor for Leonardo DiCaprio. After his long wilderness journey, both in the movie and also outside of the world of getting an Oscar. He finally achieved the dream for this one. So Inarritu, in reality, although not in our Oscar Fairy reality, was winning for the second year in a row. And he joins only two other directors, John Ford and Joseph L. Mankiewicz, for winning two Oscars for directing in consecutive years. And then numbers wise, the biggest winner of the night was Mad Max Fury Road, which won 6 Oscars, all below the line. But I mean, we'll get into it. I think all very well deserved. Both sound awards, sound editing and sound mixing, production design, makeup and hairstyling, costume design, and film editing. That left 10 feature length films with 1 win each. Which we'll get into as time goes on, I think, talking about that. And then it also left a few movies that had multiple nominations that ended up being shut out, which I think these will also be coming up as we get into things. So those were the awards as they happened. So Jen and Antonio, what are your personal memories of this year, both in general in your lives? Although the more we do these, the more it's like my life was the same as before. So there may not be as many updates, but in our general lives, but also in your movie life, what were you thinking about the movies that came out? What was going on for you in 2015? Jen, how was your 2015?
So, in terms of Oscarology, this was the first year when I went back and looked at the nominees and the winners. The first year I actually remember tracking the race sort of well before Oscar weekend. And so I have a distinct memory about being really mad about Sylvester Stallone not winning. We'll get into it. Because that was like a foregone conclusion. And so this was the first year I can have sort of memory touchstones of being like, oh yes, I was familiar with this narrative or this expectation or this sort of Oscar prediction type thing. So the spotlight thing, it was huge. People were like, what is going on? It was like a throw the table over kind of like, what are we even doing? Not that people were mad about the win, but that people who were trying to predict the Oscars accurately were like, what is happening? Because usually, actually, you said earlier that usually Best Picture winners have a bunch of other wins. Oscar pundits during the show use that as a way to be like, oh, it got screenplay. Oh, it got this. Oh, now we're heading. I think Parasite was that way, where like it had a couple key wins, and then people were like, oh my gosh, is this winning Best Picture? Whereas this came out of nowhere, right? And so I remember it. Whereas like when we did this last time, I didn't have those sorts of like narratives kind of logged in my head that were jogged by looking at these films. So that's kind of like as an burgeoning Oscar pundit, like that was where I was. This is where it all started. But it was interesting. I went back and looked for old Oscar podcasts from this year. And Oscar podcasts were just starting to become a thing, I think, because the only one I could find was IndieWire Screen Talk did like a breakdown after the ceremony. It was Ann Thompson and Eric Cohen, and they had both gone to the Oscars, so a lot of it was like, oh, which celebrities did you see, or like, where did you go, and like a lot of that stuff. And then, but none of the sort of big staples. It wouldn't be till 2017 that I think the Big Picture started. And so I wasn't full on like listening to a bunch of podcasts at that point. In my personal life, this was the last year I did not have children. So in that sense, it was significant. Probably the last time I would have been able to watch these movies whenever I wanted, right? Which I'm a little wistful for. But how about you, Antonio?
Well, so this was the year that my eldest son was born. So this was my first year with the child. So he was born in May. Um, uh, Janine and I bought the townhouse in South Pasadena where we have continued to live in at the end of that year. So it was a pretty significant like personal year, obviously. What that meant also was that I didn't have a lot of time to go to the movies that year. Uh, but as a moviegoer, so I recall my feeling that this was kind of a weak year for Oscar. I didn't have as many movies that I felt super invested in this year. I had a top three, a solid top three, and those were Mad Max Fury Road, which again is like it's kind of an unusual movie for me to love, but it was my favorite movie kind of by far. And then Carol, and then Brooklyn, all nominated. Um, I think should have Probably each of them should have won more. We'll get into that in a bit. But again, I didn't have as much time this year to watch, but with those three movies, it felt like those were definitely worth my time, and they're very different films. But I feel like the movies that follow that, there was a sort of significant drop off for me. Now, there were a lot that I didn't get to, partially because it was the year that Elijah was born. So and I made up for one of them with PT. We'll talk about the Revenant in a bit. um, but anyway, so that was my. How about UPT?
Well, in personal life, this was a big kind of transitional year for me to get to it by the relationship I was in that I believe I had mentioned in previous Oscar Fairy episodes. For those of you who listen to these, tracking our personal lives more than the movies, it was like I was like I'm pulled between, like I'm going back to the East Coast, like that was like sort of was officially winding down this year. This is the year that was sort of called off. So it felt like, okay, I'm officially here. I kind of locked myself into being in LA, working at our job where we are, and kind of committed to that. And so that was liberating and scary, but also good and positive, yada yada. I don't think that necessarily had a direct impact on how many movies that I saw, but I just have this continued stretch of there being like half of the movies that are either in consideration or have grown over time as folks being like, no, this is actually really good. I missed. I never saw them, and so I've been once again scrambling to catch up with them. As the childless one of the group, I do have time to watch like 5 movies on a Sunday and just bang through them. I fast forwarded through half of The Danish Girl. I'm going to fully admit that. I started it after midnight and I was like, I have to go to work tomorrow. I'm not watching this whole thing. I watched an hour. I think I got it. Like, I think like I figured it out. By the second time, the main character was like, I have a sickness. I was like, okay. We can yada yada. Anyway, so yeah, that was a big deal. My big sort of tentpole memories of this year are not necessarily the movies I thought were the best. Although I agree with Antonio, like far and away top of the list, Mad Max Fury Road was there. Opening night, the IMAX theater in Hollywood, the Chinese theater, in dead center, like right before the break, the front row before the break in the audience. So like just an unobstructed view. And we talked about this in the Mad Max retrospective, another episode you can go find in your podcast feed. That like just an incredible experience. The crowd was so into it. We were so pumped, and I had a great time. I saw that 2 or 3 more times in the theater. And then at the end of the year, Star Wars movies were back, and Star Wars: The Force Awakens came out, and so that's another that like this stretch of time now that I've like was free from sort of relationship struggles. I locked myself in a different cage when it became Oscar movie time and spent most of December watching Star Wars movies over and over again instead of going to see the good Oscar movies. But I've caught up on a bunch. I have plenty of things to say. I will note here that just to to say this is year 2 of the Oscars so white kind of movement. We talked about it last time. There was a reaction to all of the acting nominees and many of the behind the scenes, above the line, writing and directing as well, being all white people. And also it was all the acting nominees for the previous year, the 2014, 2015 Oscars. And this year they did it again. They were just like, well, what if we double down on that? What if we just once again only nominated white people? When there were a bunch of people of color that were in the running that folks were sort of thinking, oh, this person has a chance or even is a lock come nomination time. So that was tough. Only made more tough by the actions of the Oscar Fairy ripping away Academy Awards from Mexican directors, which is something that's been happening here recently, which again we'll be talking about. So yeah, April Rain, the woman who coined with a tweet the Oscars so white hashtag the previous year, tweeted this year on nomination morning, it's actually worse than last year. Best documentary and best original screenplay. That's it. Hashtag Oscars so white. So, I think we've got stuff to think about. We can't fix all of history. And again, I think in the long run, maybe this was a good thing because the Academy really tried to revamp its membership and open its doors a little bit more. And there's been some positive momentum, if not obviously enough. But that said, when we can go back and change history, we can maybe do some good things here.
Just the other thing I'll add to that is when I went back, I didn't do extensive digging back into the discourse from this year of the Oscars, but the international flair of the Academy that we often talk about now when trying to predict things, right? The taste of like the more international, completely absent. Like no one in the Oscar punditry at the time was sort of trying to be like, well, like the in terms of how to predict who was going to win. So yeah, it was in terms of the Oscars and the discourse surrounding it, a very, very different time than it is now.
Like one older British lady getting a Best Actress nomination was like, we went foreign. And it's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I guess. But yeah, it's interesting how much has changed in a relatively short time. Okay, let's talk about the rules here on our Oscar Fairy Flashback episodes. We each have points to spend on altering the slate of nominees and winners. In a below the line category, and that refers to the technical and production crew categories, as well as specialty feature film ones like Best International. I think was it still foreign language film at this point? Yes, Best Foreign Language Film in 2016. Foreign language film, Best Animated Feature, and Best Documentary Feature. All of those below the line, we can swap out a nominee by spending 1 point. Swapping out a nominee in an above the line category, which means screenplays, acting, or directing, requires 2 points, and swapping out a Best Picture nominee is 3 points. To change the winner within a given category costs double the points. So if you want to change something below the line, it's 2 points. For above the line, it's 4. And for Best Picture, it's 6 points. So if, for example, someone wanted to make Jurassic World the Best Picture winner of the year 2015, it would cost a total of 9 points. 3 points to swap it with, say, The Big Short, so it became a Best Picture nominee, and then 6 points to have, again, Jurassic World become the Best Picture winner. Hashtag Oscars so roar. In terms of points, we each get 10 at the start of a New Year's discussion. Any points not spent in a given episode can be carried over to a future Oscar Fairy Flashback. Everyone this time has some rollover points to play with. So Antonio retained 4 points last time, so he will start with 14 this go around. And then both Jen and I ended last episode with 2 points, so we have 12 each. So we've got some points to play with, and I've already alerted them over text. I've got plenty of ideas of things here, even though we'll get into it. We allocate the points individually. Unlike our hype drafts, we are not competing against each other to build our own team. Instead, we are working together on building one collective, collaborative Oscar Fairy slate. All changes must be made with full consensus of the group. And hopefully that's actual like strong consensus and not the awkward appeasement of some earlier years. Is that going to be contentious this time? I don't know. We'll find out. There may be some disagreements. So yeah, guys, let's sprinkle some dust before we get into specific changes. I want to sort of think about just the general slate. What are your thoughts on these winners and even the nominees? We don't need to start throwing out any changes yet, but I don't know, Antonio. What are your thoughts here on this roster?
Yeah, I alluded to it earlier that for me it was sort of a weaker year, and that the Best Picture slate in particular, there are 3 films that I actually just didn't care for that much, or that I think that I could probably switch out pretty easily. You mentioned The Big Short earlier. I thought that was fairly overrated at the time, and I thought it was fine. Um, but I think it won the Producers Guild Award that year. So that was part of the discourse about like Best Picture was that was that all of the bellwethers were pointing in different directions, right? So this was a year where I think The Big Short and The Revenant were the ones that you thought might pull it off. I thought those were the sort of favorites. So this is the rare instance in which the winner was a pleasant surprise. I'm very accustomed to Best Picture being a very unpleasant surprise. Like, um, Crash, for example, was an unpleasant, very unpleasant. Let's go back to that
Well,
year at some point and fix
well,
that atrocity. But anyway,
Antonio, we're
okay.
going to be talking off mic at some point about how far back we go because I'll go
Okay.
back as far as you'll go.
Okay. Very good. So that was a very pleasant memory, but I remember not feeling as invested in a lot of the categories because I mean, partly because I wasn't watching I didn't watch as much this particular year because of the birth of my son, which is a good reason to not watch movies. But also I wasn't that excited to watch, for example, Trumbo. I didn't love The Martian. I didn't want like The Danish Girl wasn't that exciting to me either, right? So it just was a year where there were a few movies that I really cared about. So I was really excited when the Mad Max Fury Road steamroller started to go on early in the ceremony, and it kept announcing that name. So that was really fun for me. What about you, Jen? What are your general impressions of the slate, the winners?
It sounds like in terms of the movies that are nominated, I'm a little bit higher than you, I think, because for me, when I look back at this list, especially the Best Picture roster, I'm like, these are solid movies. Like barring one or two exceptions, like Mad Max Fury Road, which we mentioned before, a lot of these movies are like I really liked, but they're not like all time favorites at all, right? So like I actually do enjoy The Martian quite a bit. I did enjoy The Big Short. Again, I'm the basic Oscar voter out of all of us, so, like,
Oh,
this tracks,
that's
right?
that's
So,
not
like,
true.
these are movies that are designed for me. The one I don't remember fondly from the Best Picture lineup is Room,
It was tough.
not because it's poorly made, but because I really resented how much it scarred me and tried to scare me, and kind of a manipulate me emotionally. And this is, as I said, the last year before I had kids, but by this point I had decided I was going to have kids. Like, you know what I mean? Like we had gone on like our last big international trip, and to be like, okay, and we bought a house. Like it was like the like we're honing in on having children. And so watching this was just like, oh no. And I, in a way that I really like, I resented how traumatic it was overtly trying to be, I remember. And also like the Brie Larson win, I believe ruined her career. It was one of those instances where she peaked too early, and then her like she's just never recovered. You know what I mean? Like she's only been in middling Marvel movies and like and other things um in a way that like you know what I mean? It would have been really hard to follow at that earlier in her career an Oscar win. And so yeah, so there's a lot of weird quirks about this year. I remember being really happy Mad Max cleaned up below the line. And I remember being really pleasantly surprised. Spotlight, a film that I really enjoyed, have not thought about much recently, but I remember really enjoying it at the time and being like, oh, this is so well done. And it is really like, that's like a catnip type movie for me, where it's like smart people trying to get to the bottom of something. Yes, all day. And so, yeah, so I was like pretty satisfied. Like I didn't go through this list being like, I'm so offended by a lot of these winners. I was like, yeah, this seems fine. This seems solid. I'm not like irate about stuff. So yeah, so because of that, I might not have like a ton of huge changes to make. I do have
Same
some,
for me.
but
Same for I'm still
Yeah.
smoking a cigarette from last year, so go ahead, PT.
Well, I mean, I'm excited about some of the pathways where I can see if I can lure you guys into making some changes that I can't afford to do. You guys have already hinted
we're gonna
at.
support your expensive habit.
I mean, look, let's see. I think this year, looking at the slate, I'm so buoyed by what is the bottom, the below the line looks like, where I'm just like, go, just banger, banger after banger after banger. Ex Machina upsetting in visual effects. Mad Max Fury Road getting 6. Ennio Morricone winning finally his first competitive Oscar for the Hateful Eight score, which like, whatever the Hateful Eight score, but like Morricone won an Oscar. That's incredible. Like 15 years after he got his, well, you're not going to win an Oscar. Here's your Lifetime Achievement Award, I guess. So like, there's just a lot of great stuff down below. And then, I mean, Inside Out, I don't know if we count that, I guess, is below the line. Inside Out, incredible animated feature. Love that. Haven't watched the Amy Winehouse documentary, but have only heard good things. So great. Once we start getting up and above the line, it's like, I'm not mad at any of these winners. These are all people I'm glad that they won, but like, I kind of would change all of them except for the 2 Spotlight wins. And even the Best Picture for Spotlight, like, again, or I shouldn't say would change it. I would vote differently if I were voting, except for original screenplay Spotlight. I probably would have voted for Fury Road for Best Picture if were I an actual Oscar voter. But for the other ones, I would have definitely voted differently, or had wished, which is part of this whole exercise, wished that we didn't have to finally, that Leo would have already had an Oscar. So someone like, say, Michael Fassbender could have won Best Actor for an incredible performance in Steve Jobs. But Leo was great in The Revenant. Good for him for winning, blah, blah, blah. So it's interesting that, like, I'm not like, and I don't want to keep using this as a benchmark, but like, Antonio last year was like, there was a disgrace put upon the name of the Academy. Like, or just coming in being like, there needs to be something changed here. I'm a little close on 1 or 2 of these. I've built up a little bit of energy, but I'm not mad at the winners so much as there are some people who didn't win that I want to elevate. So I feel pretty good about that. I'm not, there's other years where I'm like, oh my God, this thing won, or this person won for that movie. Are you kidding me? I don't really feel that way, even if I don't love all the movies necessarily. But like, there are some that I think do get slept on. Again, I know, Antonio, you feel differently. Like, I think The Martian's great. I think The Martian's a top 5 Ridley Scott movie. We watched that again. It kind of slows down a little bit. It kind of loses some steam in the last like half hour, or maybe like for a half hour before the final sequences.
Once we're not growing potatoes anymore.
Yeah, a little bit. Like, we spend too much time away from Matt Damon, I think, which is sort of a problem. But like, Brooklyn's incredible. I love Bridge of Spies. I have a maybe unpopular take. Bridge of Spies is Spielberg's best movie of the last 20 years. We can dig into that more some other time if we want, but like, I don't know. Tell me what's better. Bridge of Spies is great. It's really good. And yeah, there's some other ones that maybe we'll make some changes around that I'm not as into, but yeah, like, overall, I feel pretty good about this. That said, I have changes on my short list that are twice as long as the points I have. So what the hell do I know? Antonio, well, I guess having said that, having hyped up all the changes that I've said I want to make, I should throw out the first thing that I want to do. And I think in doing that, I apologize. I'm talking too long.
Maybe you should let us do it, because we might cover one that you already have.
Okay. Look, I'm fine with that. Jen, what's one that you're thinking about?
So the kind of bigger picture last note that I will make, which will segue into my first pick, is this is a really good year for genre movies and genre blockbusters, things that are not traditionally respected by the Academy unless they are a more elevated version of them. And I would say that Creed fits this description because it is a sports movie, right? Which is not typically something that will get a lot of Oscar attention. And it doesn't get a ton, but it gets some. But I think the one egregious error the Academy makes is Michael B. Jordan not being in Best Actor.
Agreed.
It's just like, he is so good in that movie. He is what makes that movie, makes me, when I'm watching that movie, forget that it's a legacy sequel. And that he makes me feel like it's its own movie, right? Despite having an older Sylvester Stallone in it. Right, which says a lot, I think. And so yeah, so that would be when I was looking over the past winners, I actually just assumed that he was nominated, and I forgot that he wasn't. And then I was like, wait a minute, we can't let this stand. So that's my first pick.
Well, now I mean,
we both support this.
We do.
I would say Cranston or Eddie Redmayne was already nominated for Theory of Everything.
He just won. We didn't change that.
So yeah, so I'm fine. I don't think he needs another nomination.
Yeah, Trumbo's another, like Antonio, I never got around to watching it. I have heard multiple pundits describe it as the worst acting performance of the 21st century that got a nomination. but I haven't seen it. But whereas I did watch again like half of The Danish Girl, and I think Eddie Redmayne is doing fine work with what he was asked to do, but it also is like in looking back in the trajectory of trans rights in the world and in America. That's not a
It's a
performance
little
or a
problematic.
story that we
Yes.
need to have gotten nominated, especially if we can see if we still stand by it. But he has a co-star currently who's going to win for that movie in supporting actress. So like, what if just we focus on Alicia Vikander and replace Eddie Redmayne? I think that sounds good. I need to make a public apology to the movie Creed, which I did not watch until like 5 days ago, and it's because I had seen the main Rocky movies, which I think of as 1 through 4, in bits and pieces over time, and I was like, I get them, it's fine. And then Creed came out, and I was like, I don't need to see the like Return to Rocky, like it's fine. And people were like, it's really good, and I was like, I don't think it is. And they were like, no, everyone's really good in it, and I was like, I'm sure. I like Michael B. Jordan. I'm sure he's doing fine. And I gotta say, it's really incredible. And to the point where, and we can fight the folks on the nostalgia test at some point about this, I think it's better than any Rocky movie. I think it's certainly like even the first one. And he does such a great job. There's one line that is delivered towards the end of the movie in like the corner during a fight. I mean, spoilers that it ends in a boxing match. But there's a line that Michael B. Jordan delivers that is like on paper super telly and just very like, and this is what this has all been about. But the momentum of the fight and the characters and the interactions and the way it's all been acted and performed and the way he delivers it, I just started crying like as soon as he said it. So I won't say what it is. I won't give spoilers away. But I fully endorse this. And again, if it weren't for Leo needs this, it's time, all that. I'm not here. I don't. If someone else wants to, that's fine. I don't want to try to topple the DiCaprio momentum of all of this. I would potentially be arguing for Michael B. Jordan
I
winning.
think
It's
we
him
can
or
go ahead.
Fassbender for me.
I approve the Michael B. Jordan. Do we put Michael B. Jordan in for Fruitvale Station
I
last
think we
year?
ultimately did not. I
We
think we
talked
talked
about it,
about
Okay,
it
but it
then for
and didn't do
sure.
never.
it.
Then for sure. Let's get him an Oscar nod here. Okay, so I want to talk about The Revenant because that was the movie that I watched with PT
Let's
in
go.
preparation for the day. So I had absolutely no interest in watching this movie in 2015, and I had absolutely no interest in watching it in 2024.
It didn't get
I
better for you in 2024.
Well, so, but, for today, I couldn't not watch the Best Director winner, especially because I wanted especially if I wanted to change it, I needed to at least
Right.
watch it, right? So, I watched it with PT and Jasmine, and within the first few minutes, I just shielded my eyes, screamed out, and I screamed out, "Jen!" because
I
it
got
was
blamed for
so.
this somehow.
No, you're not. I mean,
You should
playfully,
have.
lovingly.
You should have blamed me. I set all these things up. I'm the one who put us in a position to have to talk about it.
Yeah, but I think it's because, so listeners who didn't catch our last Oscar Fairy Flashback, when we at the end, I think we're kind of talking about what was coming up. I think I figured out that no one else had ever seen The Revenant, and I was shocked. Uh, not because it's like my favorite movie or anything, but just because it was such a big movie that year that I just was like really surprised no one had seen it. But now that you describe your reaction to it, I kind of get it.
And the there were. It was just so brutal. Like the first 30, like then the bear showed up really early. I was like, "What's going to happen to this guy? What more can possibly happen to this man?"
It's only the
But I want
beginning.
to talk a little bit. I know, and here's the thing: is that I love Leonardo DiCaprio, and I love that Leonardo DiCaprio finally has an Oscar. But can we stop awarding Oscars for like these kinds of performances? Like when you think of Leonardo DiCaprio, you think of like his charm and you think of like his excellent line delivery. And the movie that he wins an Oscar for is one where he's like wrapped in like a bear thing and barely speaks. And when he speaks, it's like this horse thing because the bear did stuff to him. And so it's whatever, fine. Like, there's plenty of examples of in Oscar history, like Al Pacino wins for Sentiment, like we talked about that, PT, right? So,
Wow.
the right actor, the wrong role, whatever. I don't want to change it because I think because I'm not sure that I talked to PT about like, well, which of his roles would we do? And I think that it would be rough to figure that out. Like we already had an opportunity last time, but that was Matthew McConaughey's year. Even though I think Wolf of Wall Street was probably the best performance, the most like Oscar worthy performance. Matthew McConaughey was also great in Dallas Buyers Club, so fine. And the other thing, though, is that I don't have a ton of investment in any of the nominees, other nominees, so fine. But that this does bring us to director.
Well, wait. Before we go, I just want to, I want to cash in on Oscar knowledge that I have. So this Leonardo DiCaprio's win here is a classic case study in an effective Oscar campaign. Because again, like this was the first year where my Oscar pundit brain got activated, and so like I distinctly remember everyone talking about how the Revenant's Oscar campaign leaned so heavily on the physical suffering that Leonardo DiCaprio went through to do this movie, and how he was in, freezing cold, icy waters for hours, and he had to like do all this like survival. So what was interesting is like the role that he played almost became his Oscar narrative, because people were like, oh, well, Leonardo DiCaprio like really almost died doing this movie. Like we have to give him an Oscar for it, right? And that's what happened. Like it's like, and that's why he won. And so, and I think most critics agree that is why he won, is because the press for the movie, the campaign for it, really pushed this narrative of like he has suffered for his art, sort of in the way that we thought that Naiad would be like. Sorry to bring up Naiad.
That's okay.
But it's the most recent
you of all
example
people,
of,
go ahead.
Talk
about Naiad.
Everyone's still thinking about it and talking about it.
Right, but that's the most recent example of where people thought that might happen, where like they tried and failed to do the same thing, where they were like, well, Annette Bening, her skin has gotten so chapped, she's been in the water for hours, like, they tried to do what they did for Leo. Why it didn't work in that case but did in this case, you could speculate, maybe a gender issue, it could be just like the movie was not as strong, right? Like that kind of campaign only works if the people like the movie too, which a lot of people did. So like they did. People like this movie.
You mean The Revenant?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, The Revenant.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were talking about Naiad. I was like, wait a minute.
No. I mean The Revenant. But that's what I'm saying. That might be why that kind of campaign worked, because people also like The Revenant, whereas with Naiad, people were meh about Naiad, so it didn't work.
This means is that I think that Bradley Cooper is going to make a movie where where he's just like wrestling coyotes or something, and he's gonna have to suffer for that, and that's going to be the role. I just don't want this to be the model of like whatever. I don't want. I think that that's true, but I hope that that's not like a lesson that portends like future performances from other Oscar hungry actors.
Yeah.
That being said,
sorry, Antonio, I'm cutting you off once more before we get to the big fight. I just, to Jen's point, to defend one thing she said, The Revenant made $533 million worldwide at the box office. That is an insane amount of money, especially now in a post-pandemic thing. Looking back, people were just like, we want to watch Leo die in the wilderness almost. Even though Antonio did not, there's no better way to watch The Revenant, in my opinion, than sitting next to Antonio and Jasmine, who are each fueling each other with louder reactions every time an arrow hits someone out of nowhere, someone's bone breaks, all these visceral tortures of the human body. Cauterized wound. He's gonna burn it. He's gonna burn it. Like that definitely was said at one point. It's great. That elevated the movie for me.
I wish you'd been recording this like mystery science theater.
Yes. No, it would have been good. I will also just say that I feel like some have said, and that like what Leo unlocked in this, which maybe is like, unique to this character, but and this role, but the idea that, Leo gets Oscar campaigning now. The narrative since then has sort of been, he'll do that in the Oscar movies he's in for a supporting win for his co-stars. And that was Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and then unsuccessfully, as we know, Lily Gladstone in Killers of the Flower Moon, that he's out there doing the campaigning level that he did for The Revenant, but talking up his co-star instead. So speaking of The Revenant, Antonio, what do you think about Best Director this year?
Okay, well, here's the thing. I will say this. I have a lot of respect though for the directing of the film. Did I like it? No. Did I like the film? No. Did I enjoy it? No. Would I watch it again? No. Did I need to watch it? No. But did I respect the directing, and do I think that it would have been just incredibly visceral? Like, it was visceral enough on, on PT screen with, like, him next to me in, like, broad daylight. We watched it, like, the middle of the day, like, 1 o'clock
Yeah,
in the
foolish.
afternoon. So, like, to watch it in the theater where you're just sort of, like, trapped and you can't look away, and, like, I can imagine, how beautiful the few moments of beauty in the nature scenes would be in the theater, and, it was a very it was gory and propulsive, and I get it. So, like, I'm actually, even though my preference would be for George Miller, Mad Max Fury Road, right? Like, that's who I think should win best. I think that's the best picture of the year, but I too feel I was delighted with the Spotlight win, and even though I was rooting for Mad Max Fury Road, I don't know. I'm okay with Spotlight winning best picture. So I don't know that I'm gonna spend a ton of points or try to convince you all about Mad Max for best picture. I would prefer George Miller for directing, but I also understand Inarritu for directing here, and I'm okay to leave it alone if you all feel strongly about that. I mean, I'm talking to Jen. um, so what do you think, Jen?
Well, wait, so remind me, what did we do with Birdman?
It was
Well, we
replaced by Richard Linklater for Boyhood.
Okay.
So
So
Inarritu currently in our world has not won an Oscar.
if we change this one.
Well, yeah, I mean, going into this ceremony, if as if we're changing the history of
Right,
it,
right, I see.
he's not coming off a Best Director win. He would. So this would be, yeah. If he doesn't have it now, God knows what he'd be doing to desperately try to win Best Director. He'd probably still do Bardo. It's probably the same thing. But anyway,
I mean, so my concern is the pattern of stripping away these Oscars. But if we just think about the movie, I liked The Revenant at the time. I haven't rewatched it, but I remember being like, yeah, this is a pretty gripping survival story. Like, Tom Hardy's being weird, like, it's got some things going for it. But I don't necessarily have a particular attachment to The Revenant. So, like, that's my thing, is like, I don't know if I have a good argument for why we should keep Inarritu as best director for this movie. But I am worried about the optics of if we also change this,
yeah, it's
because
not.
then that locks us into keeping Shape of Water later.
I don't think it does. I think it locks us into keeping Roma for sure, which I don't think anyone has a problem with.
No problem with that.
I
love
will say,
Greta Gerwig.
I will say I have no problem with keeping Guillermo del Toro for Best Director, because I really like Shape of Water. Shape of Water is my Revenant, where I'm like, I like that movie, and everyone's like, this movie won.
Well,
Like, come on.
I like that movie. I like that movie too, and I know Jen did too. I remember
Yeah, I
having
do.
that
Yeah.
Okay,
conversation.
good.
I've had to defend that movie to a bunch of people. So
It's good. I do find this tough. The discussion of, well, then what would we give it to Leo, which did sort of unlock, like, for in the conversation, Antonio and I scheming on our own, the, like, how far back could we go with the Oscar Fairy Flashback, which was tied in with the Creed discussion, where I was like, in 1976, there's no way that Rocky could win. I'm sorry. Like, it is at best the fourth best movie, and it's only because I haven't seen the fifth one yet. And I think Rocky is fantastic. There's just so many good movies that year. And he said, well, maybe we wouldn't have the problem of, the vibes if we were able to go back to the 70s, 80s, and 90s, have given Martin Scorsese another Oscar at some point. Then there wouldn't have been the pressure on our first episode, which at the time I didn't know. I thought it might be our only episode. What if no one liked doing this? For me to try to successfully push through Martin Scorsese replacing Alfonso Cuarón. So, I mean, maybe what needs to happen is if we do this enough where we end up with like an accumulation, we have to do an Oscar Fairy flashback where we go back and like undo some of the changes we did, and just to be like, okay. Let's rearrange now that we see what else has been done.
So can I throw other nomination suggestions? This doesn't necessarily address the should it be George Miller and not Inarritu, but problem.
Of course.
But since we're already talking about director, so I would love to see Ryan Coogler in here.
Second.
I would also like to see. Oh, maybe that's it. Wait, there was one other director I thought I had in here.
I had Todd Haynes on my list for Carol.
Yeah. So I said.
And I have two people I'm looking at who can go real easy from this list. Personally,
so I'm assuming it's Room, Lenny Abramson. Who, apologies, I actually don't know any of his other work, so his name doesn't necessarily mean anything to me. But
we're sorry to that man.
I also, this was last on my list, but Ridley Scott for The Martian.
That's fair.
I don't feel as strong. Like, I do think that the directing in Carol is better than or more notable than the directing in The Martian, but the Martian is good. I like The Martian. So, and I like Ridley Scott when he's doing good work. So,
the important caveat.
Yes.
I want to say one thing about Room. When I was looking back at my like rankings of movies for the year, and I said that it was Mad Max, Carol, Brooklyn, and then a big gap, and then 4 was actually Room for me.
Oh.
Now but I'll say this: Room is a hard watch, and Room is the kind of movie that also you could make the argument that only exists to like watch just an amazing performance by someone, but it's like it's hard. It's like a hard movie to watch. I remember thinking that year that it was a surprise how well Room did. I mean, to get a Best Picture nomination for that movie, because there's such a singular focus on one character. It's just so dark. Like Brie Larson, everyone expected her nomination and her eventual win, but for the movie to get that much attention just seemed we have a lot of years where like Meryl Streep is nominated, but she's like the only thing that gets nominated, like maybe that and like makeup. So it seemed like it was going to be sort of in that category. So I remember feeling like it was sort of a refreshing surprise, but I also think that even though I probably I respected that movie more than the rest of you, I'm fine with it being replaced, so I'm fine with the director suggestions that you all have laid out. What do you think, PT?
Well, I will say I only watched Room over this past weekend. We were recording on a Monday. Room was one of the ones I watched in my 2015 binge. And it was one of the last ones because I was like, I don't want to watch this. This is going to be so depressing. Like, and it was like out of nothing but respect for the talent that I knew would be involved. And there was, it was by no means like this is a bad movie. This is a well done movie. It did veer into like just feeling like emotional manipulation and punishment, like in a way almost comparable to the Revenant, even though like very different styles and vibes, but it's just sort of like, you're just pummeling me now with like what you're trying to get across. And, if Lenny Abramson wasn't nominated for this, and if I hadn't read all the sort of contemporary articles about surprises and snubs when the nominations came out, that was a surprise. He had been like not in the finalist list, or he was in lists where there's 6 candidates, but everyone was like, well, he's not going to make it. And it was Ridley Scott and it was Todd Haynes. It was the people we're talking about, Ridley Scott, Todd Haynes. And I guess I don't know if it was Ryan Coogler, but those two names, Spielberg for Bridge of Spies, because he's Spielberg, was also in the list. So keep it all guys. Don't worry about it.
Who did Steve Jobs? Aaron Sorkin? Was he a director?
No, it was Danny Boyle.
He was
directed.
Okay. Oh, that's right. Okay.
So yeah, Danny Boyle also in the discussion. So yeah, that it was like a surprise, which is great, and I appreciate that for him. But like in watching the movie, I was like, is this directing phenomenal, or is it just 2 incredible central performances in Brie Larson and Jacob Tremblay? And that I did sort of land a little bit more on the latter, and the directing was like when I felt the directing doing something, it felt manipulative instead of reinforcing it. So, like, it's not because I hate him. It's not because I hate the movie. I respect the movie. I don't think I ever want to watch it again. But I'm glad I did. I think it's a good work of art, and I again I apologize to that man.
I mean, it is powerful. Like, it
Yeah,
haunts me to this day. Like, I still am not sure if I'm ever gonna let my kids walk home from school by themselves because of this movie. You know what I mean? Like
you're never building a shed. Just no, forget it.
I think that I
um
will say, and again, I'm fine with replacing him for director, but I do think that sometimes for directing, there's a valuing of the special effects and the and like violence on screen and maybe a little bit of discounting that directors do have to like coax out of their performers these things, right? So it's not.
It's true.
I give him some credit for taking this very difficult subject matter and weaving these sort of like really incredibly moving central performances. Because I think that there are instances in which we have excellent people who we know are excellent performers, and and they have all the ingredients, and even the screenplay might be working, but the movie still doesn't work. And the director, I feel like, has a role in that too. So that being said, because I think ultimately Room is not as not on par with some of these other films, I'm okay with replacing it. But where does that
If
leave us for director? At least the
if
nominee
we
slate.
if we this is what I was gonna say is like I would pay 2 points to have Todd Haynes for Carol replace Letty Abrahamson, which I feel like I think all of those points are really good, Antonio. But it's also like I don't, especially looking back, I don't know who's arguing that Carol isn't a better directed movie than Room because Carol's incredible.
Absolutely agree with you. I absolutely
And then Jen, are you Ryan Coogler replacing Adam McKay? We don't need to say anything about Adam McKay and directing The Big Short?
all I'll say is like The Big Short is my favorite Adam McKay movie.
Even above like the old Will Ferrell comedies, like
I
Step
mean,
Brothers and Anchorman, because I would put those over The Big Short.
oh,
I love
Anchorman is
Anchorman.
pretty good. I mean, like that style of comedy is not just it's not necessarily my jam. So
Yeah, that's fair.
like I respect it more than I enjoy watching it oftentimes.
Sure.
Like I'm like, oh, this is like funny and weird and clever, but I'm not going to be like, you know what? Let's watch Anchorman again. So so in that sense, and I guess I'm in my head I'm compartmentalizing those comedies from his like I'm talking about like this compared to like Vice or what's the other one? To Google.
Don't Look Up.
Yeah. Like I did not like Don't Look Up.
I
No,
hate
Don't
it.
Look Up wasn't good. And Vice was rough. And I think part of me wonders is, and this isn't we can't actually change the trajectory of how the films are made. I wonder if The Big Short being as lauded as it was, like, only unlocked a lot of Adam McKay's worst instincts in the follow-up movies.
Oh,
Because I did like The Big Short as well. I wasn't like, yeah, this is one of the best movies of the year, but I wasn't upset by it. Although I did not go back and rewatch it. I have not revisited it since seeing Vice and Don't Look Up, and each of those movies has in turn been like, oh my god, he's really leaning more into like this vibe that like all of you are just so stupid and don't understand these issues like I do. Let me tell you about it, which
right. It's like
gets
cute in The
exhausting.
Big Short because we have Margot Robbie in a
And it
bathtub,
is
right?
like
Like,
a fundamentally complex issue that like was poorly explained in a way that like the Iraq War and climate change it's not been that hard to grasp in the way that maybe Credit Default
also
Stop
less
were.
pathos involved in the housing collapse. It is slightly more. I mean, not to say that people affected by the housing collapse are not feeling things. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is like as a political problem, a socio-political problem, the subject matter of The Big Short is a little bit more critically distanced, less pathos driven,
Yeah.
more logos driven, I think
That's fair.
Yeah.
So sorry, Adam, you're out. So right now we have for our slate Ryan Coogler for Creed. I'm trying to actually make sure I do this alphabetically. Todd Haynes for Carol, Alejandro Iñárritu for The Revenant, Tom McCarthy for Spotlight, and George Miller for Mad Max Fury Road. And as of now, Iñárritu remains the winner. Antonio, What do you think? Do you want to officially motion a replacement here, or you don't know?
I motion for the replacement, but I will. I'm. This isn't like last time,
Let's
where
do it because here's my argument for why we should do this,
okay.
despite
Ooh,
me arguing against it earlier. Um,
Let's go.
well, so like I don't feel as strongly about this as I do about Alfonso Cuarón.
okay.
I
Okay.
like Alfonso Cuarón as a director better than Inarritu.
I yes.
Um,
I will admit the one change we did make that I feel bad about is the Quaron one. Like, that's the one thing where I was
right.
like, "We probably made a mistake."
I
But
don't know if we made a mistake. I
here's
mean, Wolf of Wall Street's an incredible movie, very well
It is an incredible
directed.
movie, and I do think that's a better movie than Gravity, but I am with Jen in that, like, I was happy with that win at the time, so that was not one that I felt like, whatever. And I
Again,
did make the argument on the thing that I think that we should just go back and just fix the Scorsese whatever, the 70s, 80s one,
find a different
but
place
anyway,
for Scorsese.
yeah.
I do think we need an Oscar Fairy flashback down the road, and I think the first thing we address is the only change we made in the first episode, and then maybe at that point we go, are we sure we're gonna give Matthew McConaughey for Dallas Buyers Club over Leo? Maybe that was the
Well,
Wolf of Wall Street win we should have been aiming towards. But
anyway,
anyway,
let's not. Yeah,
we're
we're not.
relitigating.
Yes, we're not really litigating. My pitch for why we need to make George Miller the winner here is because we have now all seen Furiosa. That's it. So we need to give him an Oscar for Fury Road.
Right. Yeah, he's not going to win an Oscar for Furiosa. He does have an Oscar for Happy Feet, but he does need an Oscar for Fury Road. I mean,
Yeah.
come on.
And it is such an achievement, and I feel, and I was being facetious about Furiosa, a film that I really enjoyed, but does not reach the heights of Fury Road.
No, what does?
And so I think seeing Furiosa now makes how great Fury Road is even more obvious. You know what I mean? Like, to be like, wow, like it really was this singular film that cannot be recreated. And so
Right.
I think because of that, this is the one place that George Miller needs to shine.
And there was a degree, and this came out during the night when everyone who won a Below the Line award kind of was acting like I'm the last person from Mad Max Fury Road who's going to be up here on stage. And it was all like, and George Miller pulled it all together. George is the one who made it happen. And then people kept winning and they kept saying it, which I think was part of the reason why, even though like that has obviously can't change the votes and can't change anything, it was feeling this momentum of like, this whole night is about how George Miller assembled this impossible miracle of a movie. So like, shouldn't he win this at the end? And I will say, I talked about the joy of watching Antonio and Jasmine react to the movie. I like The Revenant way more than I thought I would. I didn't love it, but I was like, no, okay, I get it. I will be honest. I was coming here today. I was not going to motion to replace Inarritu as best director. I was going to let it slide. I was going to be like, it should have been George Miller, but I'm not going to motion for it. I'm not going to allocate points to it. Inarritu did such a good job. And we did take one away from him. I'm fine with him winning this time. I'm saying this now that we've already locked in that George Miller's winning. But it is really good. I do think it's overlong. I think that like there's 100-minute version of that movie that is like hands down a masterpiece, and instead it's a 160-minute movie that kind of just keeps going. But yeah, it's quite good, and it is one of those things of like, this movie is quite good. Mad Max Fury Road is arguably the best movie of the decade, or is in the running for best movie of that decade. And I mean, I would say potentially like the 21st century so far. It's incredible. It's like it's a whole other level. So there's that. I will say with what Antonio was saying, and I like this sort of movement we've been having of maybe if we felt really positive about a win on the night, we should be leery to go back and change it. I rewatched Spotlight in the last few days, or some point in the last few days, and it's incredible. Like, it's not Fury Road, but like, again, what is Fury Road? But it's like an easy, unequivocal second place for me in this year with all the other movies I've been praising that I like. Spotlight is so good, and what a great movie to pick out of this sort of roster of genre movies and these big name directors, these different styles and approaches that are all very big. It's pretty tightly focused. The ensemble is so good, it tells that like journalism story incredibly well. Full on bias of I was living in Boston for like part of the duration of that story. I regularly heard, you can check my Letterboxd review for a succinct summary of it, the alternative version of what was happening at Spotlight from my parents, one of whom was a former reporter, both of whom are hardcore Catholics who took past the end of the timeline of Spotlight to turn on cardinal law and the Catholic Church. They were very big on the Spotlight team is a hand of an outside organization trying to take down a good organization like the Catholic Church. So it's great. Like I'm kind of maybe in too deep about it anyway, but yeah, I don't want to change Spotlight. I think Spotlight's incredible. One, and we'll talk about it for the next time whenever we get around to it, but one of two Light movies 2 years in a row winning Best Picture that was just like incredible. Like that's wonderful.
The Long Take Review believes in the power of investigative journalism.
We do. Pro investigative journalism. Pro going on a journalistic crusade, although I hope you choose them wisely. All right. I think we have more to say on maybe in the lead acting categories, or at least I'll circle back around. But you guys have both been quite generous with points on things that I was certainly hoping for or thinking about. So let me put a flag in. I will say I already made my apologies to Creed earlier in the earlier in this episode. That said, going into the Oscars, and I'm going against what I just said about we shouldn't replace things that we were happy for in the moment. I liked when Mark Rylance won Best Supporting Actor because, again, I really like Bridge of Spies. I thought it was low-key an incredible Spielberg movie, just a great spy movie. And I thought, oh, everyone wants Stallone to win for Creed. It's just a nostalgia thing. Like, that's dumb. And so I was like, yes, awesome. This random guy won. That's so good. Now I've watched Creed. Now I've watched Sylvester Stallone in Creed. Sylvester Stallone should win Best Supporting Actor instead of Mark Rylance. And I want to pay 4 points to make that happen. Antonio, I know you haven't seen Creed. He is so good in a way that like you don't think like Stallone was always better than you thought he was going to be in all the Rocky movies, but like in a way that just like you didn't think old man Stallone, Expendables era Stallone could like allow himself to look this bad, like, and be someone who's this flawed and still like there's something about that I never gave credit for growing up and the way that I watched the old movies, that watching them again now, and maybe it's me being older or maybe it's just paying more attention to it, that like how much it's a through line in Rocky's character that like he's always on the verge of self-reflection, but like never quite gets there, but he's always like able to kind of say something where it's just kind of like he's aware of like how he's screwing everything up and what he's doing, that like you don't think big, strong 80s action movie star Sylvester Stallone is going to be like. And they just like triple down on that in Creed. And he's incredible. It is a legacy award. It is sort of a like, hey, remember he got nominated for this role like 40 years ago in the first movie? Like, what if we nominated him again? But it's totally worth it. Stallone, Best Supporting Actor, 4 points. That's my motion.
Fine with it. Yeah.
I like it.
Jen? All right.
I support this. Yeah, I this was the Oscar narrative that I was really happy about, and then was like, huh? Mark Rylance, who I have no problem with, and I also enjoy Bridge of Spies. I like spy movies. I think I was listening to, this is a sidebar, I was listening to the Empire podcast. They didn't do an Oscar episode, which they had done the last 2 Oscar Fairy episodes that we did. So I was like relying on them to be my like sort of archival Oscar takes. But they did a like 2015 in review episode.
Okay.
And they were like, this was the year of spies. And they named a bunch of really solid to great spy movies, this being one of them, obviously. They even talked to, I think they mentioned like, Spectre, not the best Daniel Craig Bond movie. In fact, probably the worst. Maybe?
Quantum of Solace is pretty bad.
Oh, that's
was
true.
Spy the Melissa McCarthy movie this year too?
Yes.
And
I like that movie.
It got some consideration for me. I couldn't find a place for it, but I thought about it. It's a great movie.
And then they even mentioned like The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which is not a great movie.
No, fun movie though.
But it's a solid fun movie. Henry Cavill looks great.
And a movie
Uh,
that might come up again later, Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, so I was like, once they started naming all these movies, I was like, they're so right. This was a good year for spy movies. That said, I support the Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of Bridge of Spies leaving this night empty-handed now. Like, and I don't know if I've cracked in the lead up to this episode a way to give them an award that makes any sense. I think that like they got nominated for one of the Sound Awards, but it's like I'm not giving it to Bridge of Spies over Fury Road. So like it's just going to have to be another little Fablemans for Spielberg where he makes a great movie that people really like, or at least I really like, and then never gets an award for it. Sorry. And sorry, Mark Rylance. Let's also talk about how what
Does
is
he
Mark
get
Rylance
nominated
done?
anywhere else?
I don't. I mean, he might if he doesn't
Yes.
win this time.
He has a Tony or two.
Okay.
He's Michael
Yeah, he's a
Rylance
stage
is fine.
actor. He can
He's a
go be
stage
the
actor.
weird Zuckerberg in Ready Player One. Still, he's fine. He's going to be fine.
I forgot about that.
The BFG. I think he's the BFG in a CGI suit.
Oh, so that was really interesting. When I was listening to the IndieWire episode, they were like, "Oh, and this could be a really great springboard for BFG, a movie that is coming out next year." And I'm like, a movie that no one will care about. In
I will
2024.
admit my version of that of doing like research is going through this had Oscar buzz episodes about movies from this year because they talk about the general state of the race and why a certain movie, and the one that I last listened to was someone we didn't bring up and I'm not planning on bringing up because I've never seen this movie and the whole thing's a little bit tainted now, but Will Smith in Concussion was like in the conversation up until nomination
People
day.
presumed he was getting a nomination.
Right.
I remember that being shocking.
And yeah, people were shocked, and that helped fuel the Oscar so white. That was another person who was like, "Oh."
You
like,
could also say that a butterfly affect the slap.
I mean, it did because Chris Rock. They get Chris Rock to host this ceremony, and because they were in response to Oscar so white, Jada Pinkett Smith. I mean, this is what you're referring to, Jen. I'm explaining to our listeners. I know you know this. Jada Pinkett Smith says she's boycotting the ceremony because Black people, especially her husband, aren't being nominated. Chris Rock makes a joke about it, which was almost the thing I read in the beginning, but it's not really an appropriate joke to open a podcast. It would be off-putting for anyone just tuning in. So I didn't go for it. It involves women's underwear, so we'll leave it at that. And he makes that joke, and that all leads up to eventually the slap, presumably, or is precursor.
Also, his snub here, I think, gives him more momentum for King Richard that year.
That makes King Richard more of like the coronation. Anyway, so the Concussion episode, they were talking about how movies were unfolding and the film. Those guys are really locked into the film festival season of a given year because they've been attending them and paying attention to them. So they know like this movie was at Toronto and this movie was at Venice and blah, blah, blah. And they were saying like, oh, and out of Sundance, there was that window of time where Me and Earl and the Dying Girl had some momentum and people thought that was going to be a player. Just like this year when people think Coda could be nominated for Best Picture. And this was like June before it had been released.
Oh, that's funny.
So that's the opposite side when the podcasts are poo-pooing some movie as having no chance that, goes on a miracle run.
So I have a couple more suggestions for supporting actor while we're here.
I love it. I'm into it.
So,
what
but I don't. So here's my problem. This is what I need help with. I don't know if I want to swap out anybody who's already on this list, but I have Benicio del Toro because the big blind spot in my movie watching from this year was Sicario. That was the big movie I watched in preparation for this episode. Benicio del Toro's magic in that movie. He's so good. He's so scary. And so that's one I would float, though I don't know who I would boot out at his to get him in there. Other one is if we've got Mark Ruffalo in here for Spotlight, why don't we have Michael Keaton?
Here are the two things I'm going to say. First, my rewatch of Spotlight review on Letterboxd is because everyone in Spotlight submitted in supporting, even though I think you could make a solid case for Keaton if Keaton had submitted as lead, no one would have blinked. Even if Rachel McAdams submitted as a lead actress instead of supporting, that would have been a mistake because of the way the race was shaping up. I think that people would have been like, okay, yeah, she was the lead, I guess. She was the actress in charge. But instead they were like, it's a full ensemble. We all submitted in supporting. I think you could have had the best supporting actor lineup just be people from Spotlight, and it would have been fine. Like, it's like a Godfather Part 2 of just like, yeah, there's so many people. It could have been all of them. Like, they all could have been in there. I also will say, I thought I did this before, I think with Best Actor last time, so maybe I'm revealing straight male white guy sensibilities of like focusing on actor instead of actress in these. But I mean, I not only had a snub slate of a strong Best Supporting Actor 5, who if you told me these were the nominees, I would believe you. I think there's a third team that is also strong enough that it could have worked. So my second team snub slate was Benicio del Toro, Sicario, Idris Elba, Beasts of No Nation, Paul Giamatti for Straight Outta Compton, Oscar Isaac for Ex Machina, and Michael Keaton for Spotlight. And then third tier, and people might start pushing back at some point, and that's fine. Paul Dano for Love and Mercy, low-key an incredible performance. Corey Hawkins, who plays Dr. Dre in Straight Outta Compton. Seth Rogen in Steve Jobs. He's actually really great in that movie. Patrick Stewart in Green Room, where he's the head of a Nazi group. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this.
I don't think I've seen that.
Incredible. And he's great. He's still like totally like genteel Patrick Stewart, but he's super menacing. And
I don't know if I can handle Nazi Picard.
This might be too scary a movie for you, because it's a punk band that gets hired to play at this club that's out in the woods, and they find out it's a Nazi bar, and they on the stage are just like, you guys all need to go screw, and they get stuck in the green room with everyone trying to break in.
No.
And so it may not be feasible. Anton Yelchin, R.I.P., is the head of the band. And then Jacob Tremblay in Room, who like maybe we shouldn't nominate young children, but like that movie, I think he's better than Brie Larson in that movie. I think like he does more. All due respect to Brie Larson, who I think is great.
He's doing fine. He was Flounder in the live action Little Mermaid. He'll be okay.
Anyway, that's just to say.
So I have one more, because I had this in a different place on my list because it's for Greg. I also support it, but Greg wanted to be on here, could not make it. And the one thing he asked for, the one thing on his wish list, was Oscar Isaac for Ex Machina.
Well, here's a question for you all. Can Greg spend points in abstention? Or are we spending points for Greg's pick? One of us have to spend a point. These are entirely made up rules. So it doesn't... I mean... I'm just asking.
Based on what we've already done, I would say he cannot. And I'm happy to spend my points for him.
Okay.
I also don't care that much. So...
I mean, I love Ex Machina. I want to get nominated more. I think Oscar Isaac is a highlight of Ex Machina. I think I said this to you both, but I think it wasn't in the recording last time. My like initially just snap judgment looking at this slate of the Oscars, the thing I first wanted to do was, replace Alicia Vikander in The Danish Girl with Alicia Vikander in Ex Machina and still have her win. Which now that I've seen The Danish Girl, or at least half of The Danish Girl in regular speed, she's very good in that. So that's probably a better, more worthy performance, a more substantive performance than Ex Machina, but I want Ex Machina to get more recognition. So I do love Oscar Isaac. To me, the clear person that can get out of here, and I say this with all due respect to him, but not as much respect for the movie, is Christian Bale in The Big Short. Like,
and he gets nominated plenty of other times.
Yeah, he's already won. He's fine.
Yeah, I was gonna say Christian Bale and Tom Hardy probably also could go.
I was surprised. I was surprised how much I like Tom Hardy in The Revenant. Although I'm mad at myself that Antonio was the one who was able to identify his accent as being from Philadelphia before I could. And we were like, "What's his accent?" And then he got the Delco. Like once that was said, I was like, "Oh yeah, it's right there." I also always kind of thought this Tom Hardy nomination was a Mad Max one in disguise. So like, part of me doesn't want to get rid of it. That said, and I will also say, I was thinking on my list, if people don't want to, although I have no reason why we wouldn't want to double reward Spotlight with two actors in it, we could replace Mark Ruffalo with Michael Keaton, although Mark Ruffalo is great in Spotlight.
I don't want to do that.
Okay. So
Mark Ruffalo is so good at that movie, and he does have the meteor part.
He does.
So I don't think that's the right move.
Well, I don't know if he has the meteor part. I think Michael Keaton is, I mean, again, I think he's more the lead than anybody else. And I think it is more subtle, but Michael Keaton does this like he's like moving in and out of like pressuring people and gets real slithery. He has to admit that he's the one who buried the story in the past. Like, yeah, I think Mark Ruffalo is the
Michael
showier role, but I think Michael Keaton is better in the movie.
Michael Keaton in lead, take out Bryan Cranston.
Ooh, I like
I
it.
mean, the question becomes how much do we need to follow the realities of what was happening that year? Like,
But
Not
the
at all.
Oscar voters nominate people outside of the categories they campaigned for in the past. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't why we can't again,
We
we're just making
we
things
can
up as we go
perpetrate
anyway,
our own
right?
category fraud.
Yeah. So, yeah.
okay,
You want to do that?
nice.
Do that.
Yeah, I'm up for that. I'll pay for that.
Okay, so but let's so supporting actor though, I'm fine getting rid of Bale and Hardy, but it's going to be Oscar Isaac, and who's the last supporting actor slot going to?
It's
I mean,
Jen.
I
I
had
mean,
said Benicio del Toro, but I'm not like super invested in that. I just wanted to give him a shout out if we didn't have space.
I love
I
Sicario.
would
I
say
love
we.
Benicio del
Well,
Toro.
would you rather have Benicio del Toro or Tom Hardy? I mean, again, I have Oscar Isaac. I put on our list. Oscar Isaac replaces Christian Bale. We had now we still have Tom Hardy, but you could also pay points to put in Benicio del Toro. Well, we could put a pin.
We'll put a pin in it. Yeah.
We'll put a
Can
pin.
that be
It's
a
there.
maybe?
Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
italicize. Del Toro over
Because I do
Hardy.
have other Sicario
All right.
nominations.
Well, look, I want to go back to those. But Antonio, what's one? I know you said you didn't have many, but is there another one you're thinking about?
I have one more because you all have covered most things. George Miller was my big thing. So the one, and this is a change for the winner. So this will be a little bit expensive, but this is for adapted screenplay. So The Big Short won adapted screenplay, and I
It
don't
did.
like that. So I and I'm fine with actually either of these two movies winning. So Brooklyn, Nick Hornby, or Carol, Phyllis Nagy. I don't know how to pronounce that if I pronounced that correctly.
I think it's
But
Nagy.
I think Nagy. I think that Carol is the superior movie of the two, but I loved both of them, and I just think that they're both clearly better than The Big Short. So, um, so I don't know. What do you all think? Or are you fine with The Big Short not being the winner? And then what do you think if you agree that one of these two should win? Which one?
So I'm fine with this change. If I had to choose for this category, I probably would go Brooklyn because while I think Carol is the better movie overall, the writing in Brooklyn I think is a little bit better in the sense that like to me it's a little bit more literary in terms of just the type of screenplay it is. But I'm open to. But that's just if we had to choose, that's what I would choose probably.
Yeah, this is tough because I think both Carol and Brooklyn are excellent. I have a couple of complications I want to bring up. One of which I think we can bring up and probably get denounced really fast. I would just say this. I'm not proposing this as a change that would affect our decision here. I'm just saying into the world, into the ether. I would easily have voted for Saoirse Ronan in Brooklyn over Brie Larson in Room. All due respect for Brie Larson in Room. I don't think anyone else. I don't think anyone feels strongly about replacing Brie Larson because that was a great win, and that's a good movie that we've already been taking stuff away from. That said, Saoirse Ronan is incredible in Brooklyn, and she's been incredible in so many things. Maybe Lady Bird would be like even better a performance down the road, but like it's close, I think. And so and I'm not saying, I'm not proposing it because I don't have the points for it. If we ever were to change actress and put Saoirse Ronan in instead of Brie Larson, then I would say, well, it should be Carol for adapted screenplay. So those movies both win an Academy Award.
I don't want to kill Saoirse Ronan's career though.
In the way that, fair enough. And again, there's so many Saoirse Ronan performances
Because
locked
she was
in
also
already.
extremely young at this time and has
Yes.
gone on to do so many wonderful things.
But this
so,
was already like her third or fourth nomination.
It's crazy. Yeah, she's insane.
Anyway, so okay, there's that. Now, Antonio, you mean I think you've already answered this because you said what your list of movies were, and Carol and Brooklyn were up there. Where are you guys on Steve Jobs, the movie?
I didn't watch it.
Okay,
I didn't watch it.
What?
Because I did watch it recently, and
my son was born. My son was born.
I know. Okay. I'm sorry.
We've discussed this, and eventually, I do believe, even if nothing else, we will eventually make our way back to another Antonio venomous year of 2010 with The Social Network and The King's Speech vying against each other. I was always sort of like, The Social Network is pretty good, and that's it. Like, I need to go back and rewatch it. I only saw it in the theater once, and I think I was in a bad mood. And I acknowledge, I think that's clouding it. But then I also was like, oh, he did it again, but with Steve Jobs, I'm good. I don't think I need to go see that movie. Like, it'll be fine. And then over the years, people have been like, low key, that's actually incredible. This is really good. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah. Okay. Again, there's part of why I like doing this whole thing is it motivates me to finally go back and watch these movies. Steve Jobs is incredible. The screenplay is incredible. I want to swap it in with the acknowledgement that I don't know what I'll swap out. And I also don't know if I have points for it because I still have other things I want to do, but it's on my list. So I didn't know if that was going to change the equation. What if Steve Jobs were part of the discussion? Would that change the potential winner? I don't think it would for you, Antonio. And I don't think it has to. Like, I think that I would be fine with Carol or Brooklyn winning over Steve Jobs in a way that I wouldn't be fine over The Big Short winning over Steve Jobs. So I just wanted to put that out there. I wanted to put that into the conversation.
You're now making me realize I think I had assumed that Steve Jobs was on here.
No, only actor and supporting actress. That's all the nominations it got. It didn't even get Best Picture in a 10-picture lineup.
Here's what I say. I say Brooklyn, new winner, swap out Room for Steve Jobs.
Now, okay, I mean, look, I love that. Antonio, you're okay with, even though Jen just said it, you're okay with being the point payer for Brooklyn?
Pay for Brooklyn.
Okay. I'm gonna float this.
Screenplay win too.
I'm gonna float this. I think it is a great. And Nick Hornby, like he got nominated once or twice before this too. It's wonderful. I really like, I'm pro Ridley Scott. I may have come across as the most pro Ridley Scott on this. And I really enjoy The Martian. Are we sure the screenplay for The Martian is why that movie is good? As opposed to kicking Room again. Like, do we switch out The Martian? I don't know. Like this is the conflict I had where I was like, I also don't know if the screenplay for Room is like anything that is like.
When I think of Room, I do not think of the writing. That's the thing.
Right.
That's sort of why I went for it. But to counter that, The Martian, in terms of the type of writing that the screenplay would have, is somewhat comparable in terms of style and tone, somewhat comparable to Steve Jobs.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean? Because it's kind of that quippy. We're all like smart people trying to figure things out.
Yeah, if we start down that road,
lots of walk and talks.
Yeah, if we start down that road, like that's a bad look for The Martian. Like, I mean, and that's all just because no disrespect to Drew Goddard or Andy Weir, they're not Aaron Sorkin. Like, and this is pretty like peak Aaron Sorkin. He's like Social Network, Moneyball, Steve Jobs. He's really cresting.
Right. And he'll crash and burn when we get to Trial of Chicago 7. So, we should enjoy it while it's good.
We will be taking away nominations from him. And I also need to rewatch Molly's Game because I don't recall finding that particularly enjoyable. He did get nominated for that. And I think that was a makeup for Steve Jobs not being nominated. So, sorry, did you... am I attributing these points to you, Jen, for Steve Jobs in screenplay?
No, it was your suggestion.
Okay. I was trying to get...
I'm just trying to help you. I'm not paying for this.
Okay.
Though I am kind of shocked that Steve Jobs is not on here. Like,
Well, I mean,
it's,
this is why it's a problem. I'm telling you. Okay.
I do love good Aaron Sorkin dialogue. I'm weak to it.
Okay.
And also, Steve Jobs is like very well structured for a biopic. Like, I remember being
Oh, it's Antonio. I
really
really
gobsmacked at it. Yeah.
as someone who loves The Social Network, you need to watch Steve Jobs because it's like it's really smart how they choose to do things and how they construct it. It's a biopic done right. Like I think there's a few of those examples around, and it's like let's just focus in on these like moments that people are experiencing who are very famous in and track what their lives have been around that instead of just giving the
Yeah.
life story.
No, I
Okay,
actually
so
like the reason that I didn't watch it actually was because it underperformed at the Oscars. So I thought I don't need to watch this now because for whatever reason, if Aaron Sorkin isn't getting nominated for it, then that there's something, then maybe something is amiss. But I trust you, so I'll
okay,
happily watch it.
so now in adapted screenplay we have a winner of Brooklyn replacing The Big Short. That's paid for by Antonio, and then for a nominee, Steve Jobs replacing The Martian, and that's me paying for that. I spent 10 of my 12 points. Antonio has now spent 8 of his 14 points. Once again, Antonio surgically like changing winners and spending the points there. I got to respect it. And then Jen, you spend 6 of your 12. I want to talk about a movie that I don't. I'm going to put like in with Benicio del Toro in the like maybe part of the board. I another movie I had not watched that I caught up with is Tangerine, which is the Sean Baker movie from this year, and it is absolutely incredible. Very small, is definitely a Independent Spirit Awards, like five nominations, the Independent Spirit Awards, but like no one really thought it was going to get into the Oscars. Maybe it had an outside shot, or folks were wishing it would, but it didn't. The place where it probably would most likely get in and maybe fit the most context neutral would be original screenplay. Here's the problem. This original screenplay lineup is just incredible. We have the winner is Spotlight, pretty impeccable. Bridge of Spies, I'm on the record for talking about Bridge of Spies. I love it. Ex Machina, excellent screenplay. Inside Out, one of those like Pixar screenplay nominations. I love it when it happens. And then the only nomination for Straight Outta Compton, a movie which deserved better, but is because of other movies that also deserve better, not getting a lot more attention here. So I can't replace any of those. I was kicking around like, do I replace Inside Out with Tangerine? But like, I don't know if I can do that. So my like possible thing, which again, I mean, this would be it for my points. So I don't know if I want to pay for this because I've got some other ideas. Would be, I've checked the name, Maya Taylor in supporting actress, who is one of the 3 main characters of Tangerine. And I think I would have her replacing, I think, Jennifer Jason Leigh in The Hateful Eight. I like The Hateful Eight. I like Jennifer Jason Leigh in The Hateful Eight. But like, I look at these other performances and I'm like, well, these are impossible to replace. So that's the one that is like, again, I may not go for it just because of the strength of the category already. I thought for a while about like maybe Rooney Mara because that's category fraud. She's actually the lead of that movie, but I don't want to take that nomination away from Rooney Mara because that is a great performance in a great movie. So I'm just putting it out there because I don't know if I'm going to get Tangerine in anywhere else. It was worth mentioning. So the points may not end up being paid, but I want to put it out there, put it as a recommendation for both of you. Sean Baker, who later directed The Florida Project and Red Rocket, and the upcoming, I forget the
Nora.
name,
Honora.
Honora. Thank you.
Honora.
I was getting Anomalisa.
Palme d'Or winner,
mixed in there.
Honora.
Palme d'Or winner and current, like, not front runner, but like far ahead runner, deep in the conversation for next year. So
That's
this is
what I
an
was going
early
to bring up.
masterpiece.
I feel like maybe channel your energy into good vibes for him for this year,
Sure.
and then we'll be okay. Because
Another
I mean,
possibility is
I say
Rooney.
that not having seen Tangerine, so I guess maybe I shouldn't say anything. But
I haven't seen Tangerine either, but PT convinced me that that's the one that I probably should put at the top of my list, and then Steve Jobs maybe after that, and then Creed right after that. But
Yes.
one possibility here is Rooney Mara elevating to actress and replacing Jennifer Lawrence in Joy. Then that would open up a slot in supporting actress for this. But I think the main thing that we have to do here is hear what else are your possibilities, PT, and then we'll figure it out from there.
Am I the only one with possibilities left?
I have a bunch left.
Oh, I don't have anything else. So
Okay.
let's hear.
Well,
So,
maybe we should do this. Maybe we should.
Can we go to actress? Because
I don't want to say lightning round, but I think that we can put things on the table, because I think, Antonio, that's not a bad idea. That's going to cost some points, and again, points are precious for some of us. But okay, let's go to actress, Jen. I have an idea. I wonder if it's the same as yours.
So I have two ideas. One is Charlize Theron for Mad Max Fury Road.
That was mine.
My other one was Emily Blunt for Sicario.
Yep.
Now, there's a bunch of like hubbub about the way her character is written in Sicario, because she just gets like kicked to the curb over and over again in that movie. But I don't think that means that her performance isn't incredible. Like, I think she has a really challenging role, and she has to spend most of the movie staring out a window looking distressed. And it is like really good. And just the emotional implosion that she has at the end is amazing to watch. So, and I say that because I feel like that's the less obvious pick. Charlize, I feel like I don't have to explain why. She's just as incredible. But those are my two big ones for actress.
And I assume, are you looking to choose between one of? I assume Jennifer Lawrence is being targeted. I don't think anyone is like pumped about that.
If I had to swap, if I did both, I would do Jennifer Lawrence, and all respect to Charlotte Rampling, I don't know what 45 Years is. So
45 Years, another movie I'm going to put on Antonio's list. We did watch that one. It's Andrew Hay, who did All of Us Strangers. And I hope this is seen as a
I saw that. I thought
I was going to say, this is an Antonio movie. It's like very quiet, like sad people being sad.
Hey, all right. But fair. But I don't want to move Charlotte Rampling off. But okay. I'm fine with Jennifer.
Let's do Charlize for Jennifer Lawrence. I think we can all agree that she's only getting this nomination because she's riding the high of her previous ones.
Yeah.
Joy is not a very good movie.
Yes.
This is the end of her. Like, she's peaked. Unfortunately, I love her as an actress, and as like, she seems like she's a great personality. I always love watching her in interviews and stuff like that. But like, Joy seemed like just a knee jerk nomination and not a reflection of her performance or the movie Joy.
I think there's going to be a bounce back at some point. The raunchy comedy she did, No Hard Feelings, wasn't like a great movie, but like, it was good seeing her like go in that vein and try that out. So I'm like, oh, she's kind of been in the wilderness. She's going to mess around. I think she's going to be able to come back and give us some great stuff down the road. But yeah, everyone was just kind of like, I guess we like Jennifer Lawrence and David O. Russell, right? We'll nominate her. And then no one thought about it ever again. So I think that's a good replacement. I was thinking Charlize Theron as well, because come on, what an incredible performance. Easy to ignore the acting in that movie because of all the spectacle and all the technical achievements, but like, she's holding that together. Again, there's a whole Mad Max retrospective episode where we're mostly praising Fury Road, and even the Furiosa episode, we're mostly praising Fury Road and talking about how great Charlize Theron was in that role. So I do love that. I would like Emily Blunt to have gotten nominated for Sicario. She is great in that. But I also like, I would have soft pushback on replacing Charlotte Rampling because she is very good, and it is that kind of very interior, quiet performance that like, it's good when that gets recognized, and it's good when that is out there, especially with someone who's, sort of a veteran performer who's been around a while. But I might've caved if Antonio wasn't like, no. So like, if you guys are both in favor of it, I probably would have let it go, but I like that even though that costs Emily Emily Blunt. And I
I'm
would say
gonna
Charlize.
Jen Mark Ruffalo that one and say no to Charlotte Rampling, but
Yes.
fully support
That's
Charlize
fair.
Theron and Virgin Lopez.
But I think both of those were incredibly fair takes. I'm not even putting this like fake on the board, but I want to at least like put it up like into the world that it was on my list. I did put O'Shea Jackson Jr., Ice Cube's son, playing Ice Cube in Straight Outta Compton as a possible Bryan Cranston replacement. Or Michael Keaton solution makes more sense for that role. But I appreciate your encouragement for me to break the reality. That said, I won't break reality enough to put the Brian Wilson song from Love and Mercy in to Best Original Song, because that was ruled ineligible by the Academy because it was written for his album that was then put into a new album of his that was then put into the movie. So I think that's a bridge too far to actually put it in, even though that would be the best song of this lineup. This is a very bad Best Original Song lineup. The quite poor Sam Smith song Writings on the Wall from Spectre was the winner. And I know I've made this joke before. Not even the best movie written for the title sequence of the movie Spectre. Radiohead wrote a song called Spectre that the Broccoli producers then rejected, and they hired Sam Smith instead. So, again, I don't know if I'll have the points for it. I would just elevate the Lady Gaga Diane Warren song and put Diane Warren out of her misery and give her a win here. I don't know if that's what I'm spending my points on, but I'm going to put that. I'm going to put that's a temporary.
I remember that was such a
here.
painful moment because Lady Gaga gave an incredible live performance of that song during the ceremony, and then she lost, and everyone was like, "What? What happened?" Ann Thompson's explanation is, well, people had only seen Spectre, and so they checked that off.
I think there also was some pushback in the wake of because it's a song from a documentary about sexual assault on campus, and there was some pushback about at least one of the stories in there as having been like proven not true and a false accusation, and that tainted it enough that people were like, well, I guess I can't vote for that song now, even though, again, on paper, in a year where it was like, none of these songs are that good. Like, yeah, Lady Gaga is the most famous person here, and Diane Warren's been, at this point, nominated only a paltry dozen times. So we can give her the award, but it all, the combination of factors changed it. So I'm putting that in the zone of conversation. Jen, what's another zone you might want to introduce?
So I have for once I have a winner that I would like to change, and that is cinematography. I would like Mad Max Fury Road to be the winner in cinematography.
The Revenant just going home.
I know. I'm sorry.
Do not apologize.
No,
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna write it down so fast that I want to make sure there's no takebacks. That this was gonna be my compromise if we decided we couldn't change director. I would be like, all right, if we have to keep Iñárritu, for valid reasons. Again, he did I think this is a better directing performance than Birdman. So fair that he stays here. Then we got to change cinematography to give Fury Road one more win and to celebrate the camera work. So, Jen, speak on it. Why do you say this?
Well, it's an incredibly shot movie. For me, when I went back to rewatch this for our Furiosa prep, I was so struck by the nighttime scenes. And and again, it's like Furiosa, for as much as I liked it, Furiosa made me appreciate the cinematography in Mad Max Fury Road even more, because I was like, wow, this looks, it's just so sharp and high contrast when it needs to be.
I will just note, and this would have been part of my argument, Emmanuel Lubezki, not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, who is an excellent cinematographer. This was his third win in a row for cinematography. He had done Gravity, Birdman, and now The Revenant. I'm not going to say that, but we didn't touch his wins before. But his wins have stayed in our world, in our Oscar Fairy world. So I think this makes sense, and I think the cinematography is incredible. Like, again, Sicario, Revenant, excellent, well shot movies, but like Mad Max Fury Road is legendary. It's a whole other thing. I love this. I love this for all of us. I love this for you, Jen. I think you did.
It
A
just
great
looks
job
so
here.
good. It looks so good.
It really does.
The fire doesn't look fake at all, like it does in Furiosa.
Yeah. Was it real fire? Maybe. Is that one of the things that changed when George Miller was like, oh, everyone
Maybe
was miserable the whole time? Maybe that's one of the things we had to dial back.
that's possible.
Maybe. Okay. Because now I'm going to fight Jen slightly. She just watched Sicario. She loves Sicario. I also love Sicario. I want to take away a nomination from Sicario in original score, which is only because that's just the one that I feel like is replaceable. Like, all due respect to Johan Johansson, who did the score for Sicario. But I want to put in the score for a movie called It Follows, which is a horror movie
like that.
is a really good movie. And the score is this like 80s synthwave score by someone who performs under the name Disaster Piece. I don't know if they would be billed as Disaster Piece in an Oscar nomination, or if they would get their real name, but they're billed in the movie as Disaster Piece. It's an incredible score. It sets the tone for the movie. It's the kind of movie that would normally not get any recognition at the Academy Awards, but like it's really sort of like the not the beginning of, but it really added to and advanced this sort of 80s synth sound being brought back, and it's just a really good example of that. So I will admit that it's partially because I was like, I don't remember anything about the score in Sicario, so I'm going to replace that. And that Carter Burwell for, I think, Carol. Carter Burwell, that's his first nomination after doing all those Coen Brothers movies for so many years. So I don't want to take that one away. If you really want to push back and have me lose a Thomas Newman nomination, that's fine, but I did like Bridge of Spies, and I don't want to take anything more away from that because I already took away its one Oscar. But anyway, I'm not committing to it. So Jen, if you want to be like,
I don't have a strong objection. I mean, I was just looking up David Ehrlich's Letterboxd review of Sicario has a really funny comment about the score, and it's like, it's going so hard trying to be Hans Zimmer. So for that reason, maybe it's okay to let it go. But
one thing I will say is this man did die young, and this was, I think, his only Oscar nomination. So I feel a little bad taking it away from him, and he's not going to get any more. So I again, I only have 2 points, and I've got like 5 points of things to do. So maybe this won't change, but I want to put it out there mostly so I can tip It Follows. And since I'm doing that for It Follows, I also want to note it never rose to the point of me actually proposing it when we were discussing Best Adapted Screenplay. But I would love for there to be a world where I felt like I could have squeezed What We Do in the Shadows into Best Adapted Screenplay, which is a very funny movie. And I think, even though not billed as it's billed as an original screenplay in the movie, it is adapted from a short film that Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement did. So I think it would fall under that. And even if it didn't, we already said original is so full. What We Do in the Shadows, super funny. Love it. Wish I could get something in there for them. And it would probably be adapted screenplay, but there's no room. There's just no room.
I found the David Ehrlich Letterboxd review.
Good.
It's pretty eviscerating overall. He says, but there's this whole thing about muscular filmmaking, and like he's really taking down the movie in a way I don't like. But then he says, but Denis Villeneuve only has one instrument, a hammer, and that JJ's score is in a pissing contest with Hans Zimmer.
Oh my God.
Throw in Brolin's smug spook charm to soften things up a bit, and you've got yourself a real hazy border between a wake-up call narrative and a deep need to entertain. It's just like unnecessarily rude. It's just rude.
I mean, the thing with David Ehrlich is he really doesn't like many things, and he goes hard when he doesn't like it.
Yeah.
And in a way I respect it, except for when he hates something that I like, and then I don't care for it.
That said, I support your score change. Sounds fine. I support you.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I can afford it, but we'll see. Antonio, you're tapped out. Is that right?
He's good.
Tapped out. I'm tapped out. I have no other agenda for this. Jen, do you have any more?
So I had 2 fairly big ones.
Yeah.
which I don't have any more points for, I don't think. But
Well,
maybe we can get one of these in. So my last two are for Best Picture.
oh, let's go.
And the not changing the winner, because as we've talked about, we're happy with that. But just, changing up the nominees a little bit. And so I have Creed in Best Picture, and that's, I love a good Oscar puzzle. And so if we're giving more nominations to Creed in other categories, as I have
Yes.
been proposing this entire time, then it makes sense that Creed would need to be in Best Picture.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that would use up. I have 2 points left, I believe, and so one of these would use that, I think.
Well, I
Right?
mean, here's the problem: is it's actually 3 points to put something into Best Picture.
Oh wait, that's right.
Um,
I can't
so
do
we
math.
might have to do. Let me check the math. You propose your other movie,
Okay, so
and then
the other
I'll check the
one,
math.
because we haven't mentioned the name of this movie this entire episode, which is somewhat shameful because this is the year that Star Wars came back. And so my proposal, and I do this knowing I'm going out on a limb, is to include The Force Awakens in Best Picture.
I mean, look, I love it. I do wish that of all the time that I wish Greg were here, this is the time I wish he were here the most, because I think he would both have plenty to say and also may have immediately allocated points to cover something like this in the first place. So I love that. Now, Jen, this
But
is
then
what
the
I
question
have.
is, what do we boot out? Yeah.
Well, okay, so I'll circle back to that. I just want to note and see if I got this right and if I'm missing anything. This is what I have for the changes you've proposed. Ryan Coogler replacing Adam McKay as a nominee for director. That's 2 points. Michael B. Jordan replacing Eddie Redmayne in actor. Also 2 points. Charlize Theron replacing Jennifer Lawrence, actress. 2 points. So we're up to 6. And then Oscar Isaac replacing Christian Bale in supporting actor. 2 points. I have it at 8, and you came in with 12. So you have 4 points left.
You forgot, despite saying you're going to write it down immediately, you forgot Mad Max Fury Road as being the winner in cinematography.
You're right. Well, that's because it's lower on my sheet. So you're right. I did forget that. You are at 10.
So that's another 2 points, I believe.
Right. So you're at 10 out of 12. Fair enough.
So I could not fund either of these.
So to my credit, I did write it down. To my not credit, I forgot to scroll down to the lower categories when I was counting the list. Okay. Well, we'll have to think about points. Here's a question which we've not, I think, confronted before. But the rules for the Academy Award Best Picture, and we already said we'd flaunt some rules, but the rules are that there can be up to, at this point, it was a fungible up to 10 nominees. They have later solidified that as just being always 10, but it was kind of like, basically, like, we only have 8 this year. And it was like, if there was like a gap, then they would cut it off at 8. I don't remember what the rules were for the cutoff, but they cut it off. So, I mean, I would contend, and again, all of this is made up and all of these rules are just things we've come up with on our own. But I would contend within the confines of our rules, in a year like this, when there were more than 5, eventually may go back to the 5 movie era, but not a set 10 yet, or just, there's fewer than 10, that I think we could just add movies without replacing anything and just be like, well, there's just a 9th and 10th nominee, or 8th, 9th, and 10th nominee. I don't know how you guys feel about that, or if you feel like that is.
I'm fine with
Tony,
it. Then how much is that going to cost? It's fine.
Well, I mean, again, I think it still has to be 3 points, and then Jen hits the problem of not having the points for it.
I don't have enough, yeah. Which is the first time I've run out of points.
I can lend a point. I'm good. I can lend a point. Can we do that?
Okay. Yes.
Can we aggregate points?
Yeah. I mean, again, these are all rules. We've made up.
Right. Let's do it.
So, I mean, the thing is, that means we can add one of these movies. So, Jen,
it would be Creed. The Force Awakens, as much as I love it and as loyal as I am to Star Wars, is not as good a movie as Creed.
Yeah. In the year 2015, I would have been all in on The Force Awakens being up there. I will say the shine came off a little bit because of The Rise of Skywalker. I feel like the J.J. Abrams problems were in that movie are now really accelerated. Or
in 2015, it was all potential.
No, I agree. And listen, we like if we continue on the trajectory that we're continuing on, I think if we do the Oscar Fairy Flashback, at least to start as a 5-year experiment, our final year is going to be the year of The Last Jedi. And guess what's happening? There's going to be a ton of Last Jedi nominations rolling in, potentially including Best Picture. Let's see. Greg, we're going to make sure you're on that episode. I need your support. So okay. I like
by support you mean your points.
Yes, yeah. Look, he's a wonderful man, and I love him. And he's also currently worth 13 points that I would love to be able to tap into right now, or that maybe would have been used for some of the things that I already wanted to do, which means I would have more left over. Okay, so Jen is now full out with 12. Antonio has now spent 9 because he allocated a point here. I love it. Yeah, will there be listeners who are mad that we're now letting people divide points for changes? I don't think so. I think that's fine.
You assume we still have listeners.
I know 1 or 2 people who like listening to these episodes. They're not on YouTube, I'll tell you that. Anyway, all right, I'll just throw out briefly, and I don't know how much I even necessarily care about these, but I just liked them and wanted them to be mentioned. I was thinking production design nomination for Crimson Peak over The Danish Girl. Crimson Peak looks incredible.
Oh, yeah.
A Guillermo del Toro movie absolutely looks wonderful. I think that would be lovely. And then to continue, one last jab in the kidneys for The Big Short would be replacing its nomination in film editing for Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. I think with my 2 remaining points, film editing for Rogue Nation.
But why?
Because that looks great and The Big Short is stupid.
Big Short's not stupid.
It's fine, whatever. But like the action in Rogue Nation, the editing of it, I think it's great.
I mean, okay. I mean, we're not actually doing this, so
I'm not doing it because I'm gonna. I mean, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do the score either, unless Antonio wants to throw another point away to change that score nominee for It Follows. But I'm going to change the song winner. I don't want Sam Smith to have won Best Song for that song.
I'll give you a point too. 1 point for
1
point for PT, 1 point for Jen. Again, I'm still you all were very generous with the Boyhood Birdman.
Do we have to pay interest on these points? Like how is this?
No.
You're just Oprah-ing these points.
No, this is his interest for what we did last time.
Oh, I see.
Is I think what he's trying to say,
which
I think is also his way of being like, and now we're even. Okay, I want to. I'm going to go through and note changes that were said but not locked in, and it would be a point issue now. But just for the recap, unless there were any other ideas anyone wanted to put out, I didn't.
No,
think so.
I'm tapped out now.
A not included in the final tally, but a shout out in Best Picture for Star Wars: The Force Awakens, which I would have supported. I don't know if I would have supported it over Creed, but what a legacy sequel year when potentially Fury Road, Creed, and The Force Awakens all were viably in the conversation.
If only that had repeated this year.
Well, who knows? Maybe
I know Greg's still holding out for Twisters.
Yeah, Twisters, Twisters Furiosa, Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim. Future Best Picture nominee, War of the Rohirrim. Supporting actor not locked in was Benicio del Toro instead of Tom Hardy for Jen. Jen, I don't know if you want to change anything else that you did for that. I had for supporting actress Maya Taylor replacing Jennifer Jason Leigh, which maybe is for the best because I think she would have been the first openly trans actress nominated, and then to lose to Alicia Vikander in The Danish Girl might have been more insulting than just not even being nominated in the first place. And then my potentially wacky production design Crimson Peak nomination and film editing, which received immediate pushback for Mission Impossible Rogue Nation.
Nothing against Rogue Nation. I really like Rogue Nation. It's a very fun movie, but I do feel like, considering how out of control Adam McKay movie editing gets later, I do want to reward him for this. You know what I mean?
Now, Jen, don't worry. This guy was nominated for both Vice and Don't Look Up as well.
Yeah, I know. We're going to be coming for those probably. So okay. I want to maintain this one.
All right. So he keeps his nomination. That's fine. All right.
This is like the restrained. You're not going crazy. You're editing yourself while you're editing version of Adam McKay editing.
I love it. I think that's fair.
Just Hank Corwin, I think, is the editor, right?
Yeah. Jesus. Yeah. Good pull. My God. You are deep in this. I'm actually worried for you. No, that's really well done. That's well done. It is Hank Corwin. I literally just deleted his name and I had to look it up to double check. And all due respect to your work is strong. It's not your fault, Hank Corwin. So here's what we did change this year. Correct me if I am wrong, but and listeners, please leave a comment wherever you're listening if we've mistallied or misremembered anything in this process. Best cinematography. The winner was changed, let me get the name right, to John Seal for Mad Max Fury Road, replacing Emmanuel Lubezki for The Revenant. In Best Original Song, Till It Happens to You from The Hunting Ground, music and lyrics by Lady Gaga and Diane Warren, replaces Writings on the Wall from Spectre, music and lyrics by Jimmy Napes and Sam Smith. Jimmy Napes, who didn't say anything weird or wrong in the speech to get attention, so I forgot he even wrote that. Original score, we have the score from It Follows by Disaster Piece, replacing the score from Sicario by Johan Johansson. In adapted screenplay, we have as a nominee Steve Jobs replacing The Martian. And in winner, we have Brooklyn replacing The Big Short. In supporting actor, we have as a nominee Oscar Isaac replacing Christian Bale. Oscar Isaac in Ex Machina replacing Christian Bale in The Big Short, I should say. And we have the winner, Sylvester Stallone from Creed, replacing Mark Rylance in Bridge of Spies. In Best Actress, we have a nomination for Charlize Theron for Mad Max Fury Road, replacing Jennifer Lawrence in Joy. In Best Actor, we have two new nominees: Michael Keaton in Spotlight, replacing Bryan Cranston in Trumbo, and Michael B. Jordan in Creed, replacing Eddie Redmayne in The Danish Girl. And for director, we have three changes: two new nominees: Todd Haynes for Carol, replacing Lenny Abramson, directing Room, and Ryan Coogler of Creed, replacing Adam McKay from The Big Short. And the winner, Alejandro Iñárritu, empty-handed, no Oscars for Alejandro after these 2 years. For The Revenant, he has been replaced by director George Miller for Mad Max Fury Road. And finally, an extra 9th nominee for Best Picture, we have Creed, the movie Creed. How are we feeling about our slate?
I don't think I realized how much of a fixer-upper this year's Oscars were until you just read all those.
I mean, like, this was the thing, is when I first looked, I was just like, oh, this is a good year. Like, it's not a great year. It's a top-heavy year, but I was like, yeah, these wins are all good. That's fine. But, like, I think all these changes are good, are very strong. How do you feel, Antonio? I feel like you came in with, like, I have the least to do, and I have the longest stretches where I'm not saying anything. How are you feeling at this point?
Yeah, I had a couple of things, a few things that I really wanted to happen. Some of them you guys took, and then some of them I took the lead on, and that's fine. But I'm very happy with this revised list.
Okay.
How about you, Jen?
Yeah.
I'd say the trend that I'm noticing is we're really pushing back against the Academy's bias against blockbusters or genre movies. And I mentioned at the beginning of the episode that this was a really good year for those, because I'm looking at the Best Picture lineup. Like, The Martian and Fury Road are clearly like, okay, like you've got enough sci-fi blockbuster, right? Like, calm down. We can't have any. We're full, right? So I'm really glad that we got to get Creed a lot more love. I am a little sad that I came in here trying to stick up for Sicario, the one movie I watched recently, and I lost a nomination.
Oh no! Wait, that is true. Oh no!
Like, I didn't gain any, and I lost. I proposed.
Okay. Hold on.
I proposed to.
You know what? I mean, for that, I'd be willing to switch out to put Sicario back in, and I could take out Bridge of
nominated for
Spies.
cinematography, which I think is very fitting. It's a good nom.
Yeah. Let me just double check. I believe Thomas Newman has been nominated like 15 times. So it's possible he doesn't need this nomination. He has the most nominations without a win with 15. We can make that 14. I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna change it. Last minute change. I hope everyone was still listening. Sicario's back, baby. Overage of Spies, which I was wanting to defend, but it's for my movie, so I'll take it. I do also need to note we have a last minute update from Jasmine. Says she wants Trainwreck in every category. She just wants lead actor Hader, supporting actor LeBron, lead actress and screenplay Amy Schumer. Put it all in Trainwreck. Which
I don't know if I've seen that movie.
It's fun.
I love Trainwreck. I thought
It's
it was
good.
really fun.
Like
my last comment that I didn't get a chance to make earlier when we were talking when we were exiling The Martian from screenplay. If you've read the book that The Martian is based on, this is a very good adaptation. Just saying.
that's a good point. What did I? Hold on. I mean, technically, there's no rule that we couldn't just replace. We could remove The Big Short from winning and also remove it entirely. Whatever. I chose The Martian. Maybe it was a mistake because I wanted to give Room some credit. But that is a good point. The book is only okay, and the screenplay is the book is fun, but the screenplay is a little bit better. But I still
and the screenplay makes it feel really like a movie, right? Like if you hadn't told me it was based on a book, I would not have guessed that because it feels like a movie.
I mean, before we close the book,
that's trying to be shoehorned into a movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. Before we close the book, does that mean should we replace Room instead? Should I? I mean, it's mine. Like, do we think?
I'll leave it up to you. I just wanted to note that in The Martian's defense, but I don't feel strongly enough that I want us to undo what we already did.
Yeah, I mean, only because it's late and we're already over 2 hours in recording. I'm going to let it stand. Potentially, that's going to be a flashback change down the road because I mostly feel bad because I think Room is quite good, but we not only took away the director's nomination, but I also like hinted at getting rid of Brie Larson's, and just for even suggesting it, I want to.
Dan, I didn't come into this with an anti-Room agenda necessarily.
No, I didn't
category
either.
By category seemed like the easiest. Picking.
Unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, and again, Tangerine is the movie that I feel like I wish I was putting something in. And Tangerine, Straight Outta Compton, Love and Mercy, which again I think is another music biopic done really smartly, because similar to Steve Jobs, although not as good as Steve Jobs, it's just focused on like 2 moments in their lives in this person's life instead of trying to chronicle everything. But yeah. I think
otherwise I'd say good, well done.
We did good. Yeah. I think, maybe it spoke to our sort of, like feelings about the slate in the first place, that we suddenly found all these little like cracks and holes where we could dig in and make some changes. But yeah, I mean, I haven't fully crunched numbers, but I believe this now puts Fury Road, would put it at 8 wins, which puts it like above Oppenheimer. Like that there's that list of movies that have 8 or more is, you're up in the sort of elite zone for films. And I think it deserves that. And yeah, I think we made some good choices, and we made Oscar a little bit less white, despite, again, for the 3rd year in a row, putting a white man in instead of a Mexican director, which is not great. Listeners, we acknowledge it. We don't love that pattern. I feel confident we're not going to do that all 5 times that it happened over the course of 6 years. I feel pretty good about that.
If we do, then people have the right to come after us. Like that.
They do, and they are correct in doing so. Okay. Antonio, where can folks find you out in the world talking about some of these movies now that you have a list of things to catch up on from 2015?
I do. They can find me on Letterboxd at Alefano, AELEFANO. Jen, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram and Threads at Sopchockchai, SOPCHOCKCHAI, and you can find me on Letterboxd at Qui-Gon Jen. PT, remind everyone, if they made it this far, we want to make sure that they follow the show.
Yes, I don't have all the movie title puns this time, but they can follow us wherever they get their podcasts, wherever you're listening now. You can follow us there. You can subscribe. You can also give us a like, a rating, a review, whatever it might be. Please, that would be lovely. We would love that. We are hosted on Jen's Substack, thelongtake.substack.com. We're also available wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Overcast, Amazon, wherever. You can also follow us on social media at The Long Take Review on Instagram and Threads, or on Letterboxd at LTR Pod. Thank you so much for dipping into this again, guys, and we'll look forward to seeing you down the road. We got another crazy year coming up. I'm excited.
Likewise. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening. You can follow The Long Take Review on Substack at thelongtake.substack.com. Subscribe for free to receive new podcast episodes as well as written reviews of films with Oscar buzz and new films and series from pop franchises like Star Wars and Marvel. We should have an Oscar Fairy sound effect.
I think we should.
We should.
Like, it needs to be kind of like a Wayne's
chime.
World. Like,
I don't know if it's whatever you just did. No, but like,
yeah, that doesn't. It's not that. Okay.